Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. King Pururava then left Agnistali in the forest and returned home, where he meditated all night upon Urvashi. In the course of his meditation, the Treta millennium began, and therefore the principles of the three Vedas, including the process of performing yajna to fulfill fruitive activities, appeared within his heart. Please repeat. King Pururava then left Agnistali in the forest and returned home, where he meditated all night upon Urvashi. In the course of his meditation, the Treta millennium began, and therefore the principles of the three Vedas, including the process of performing yajna to fulfill fruitive activities, appeared within his heart. Purport. It is said, Tretayang yajyato makai. In Treta Yuga, if one performed yajnas, he would get the results of those yajnas. By performing Vishnu yajna specifically, one could even achieve the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, yajna is intended to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. While Pururava was meditating upon Urvashi, the Treta Yuga began, and therefore the Vedic yajnas were revealed in his heart. But Pururava was a materialistic man, especially interested in enjoying the senses. Yajnas for enjoyment of the senses are called karma kandiya yajnas. Therefore, he decided to perform karma kandiya yajnas to fulfill his lusty desires. In other words, karma kandiya yajnas are meant for sensuous persons, whereas yajna should actually be performed to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To please the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Kali Yuga, the Sankirtan yajna is recommended. Yagyai Sankirtana Prayaya Yajantihi Sumedasaha. Only those who are very intelligent take to Sankirtan yajna to fulfill all their desires, material and spiritual, whereas those who are lusty for sense enjoyment perform karma kandiya yajnas. So the verse, Talim nyasya vane gatva grihanadjayato nishi tretayam sampravittayam manasi traya vartata. King Pururava then left Agnistali in the forest and returned home, where he meditated all night upon Urvashi. In the course of his meditation, the Treta millennium began, and therefore the principles of the three Vedas, including the process of performing yajna to fulfill fruitive activities, appeared within his heart. Om Ajnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you all for coming. Just see how popular Gaur Gopal Prabhu is. I've never given a class with so many people here, and I feel very, very unfortunate that I might be the object of people's wrath later on when they think of how much they missed out on a good class, but I will try anyway. Interesting chapter this. It's called King Pururava Enchanted by Urvashi. I remember one time, back to Vijayapurna Maharaj, he was talking about male-female psychology. You might have noticed he talks about this quite a lot. He said it's like pigeons. If you watch pigeons, maybe say the female pigeon is walking towards the male pigeon. The male pigeon's walking away. Then the male pigeon turns round and starts walking towards the female pigeon. And the female pigeon turns away and starts starts walking away. Then the female turns round, and the male turns round, and so they just chase each other. This is the nature of the mind. Manorite nasati davato bahi. Chariot of the mind, attachment and aversion. So we see the same in the human relationships. We have this happens a lot, You see you've got a couple, they're fighting, they're both unhappy, so one decides to leave. And the other one goes, no, please, don't leave me. So the person doesn't leave, and they start fighting again. So it's the same, it's this pigeon philosophy. So this chapter, this is our pigeon psychology, should I say. This chapter, it's a bit like this because we see Urvashi, originally she's attracted to Pururava. Therefore they get together. But then it swaps round. She becomes detached and Pururava's attached. So you see you can't win in this world. Now it's unusual. Why would Urvashi be attached to King Pururava? She's celestial. She's a higher personality altogether. But this is a great, it's a great indication of the qualities of King Pururava. That even though he is an earthly being, still this celestial Urvashi was attracted. Now, those who know the Mahabharata will know that Urvashi was also attracted to Arjuna. And when Arjuna, before the battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna went to the heavenly planets. And his father, King Indra, he noticed, Arjuna is casting his glance at Urvashi. So he arranged for Urvashi to go and meet Arjuna. So she made a suggestion that they should get together. What did Arjuna do? He was conceiving of things in terms of earthly morality. So he said no. Now this chapter, this whole section is about the lunar dynasty. Now the Canto 9, when I think of the Canto 9, I think of Lord Ram. I mean, there's not so much on Lord Ram, but that's what I first think of. Lord Ram, because the solar dynasty is discussed in the 9th canto, but then the lunar dynasty is discussed. It happens the change happens at the beginning of this chapter. Parikshit Maharaj, he says, we have heard about the solar dynasty, now please tell me about the lunar dynasty. So it's a significant change because it's leading, where's it leading? It's leading to the 10th canto, which is the Yadu dynasty, which is from the lunar dynasty. So how do we get from Lord Ram to Lord Krishna? It's the change of dynasty that happens in this chapter. So the implication is Arjuna is in the lunar dynasty. So Urvashi, who's been discussed in the lunar dynasty now, she is a distant ancestor of Arjuna. So when Urvashi approaches Arjuna in the heavenly planets, and Arjuna's thinking, she's like my great-great-grandmother or whatever. So from the point of view of morality, there's no question of having any enjoyment. So he very respectfully declines. And she says, this is the heavenly planets. We have different rules. But he's adamant. So what happens? He gets angry and he curses Arjuna to be a eunuch. But this is actually a good curse, because in the last year of exile, remember the rules, the Pandavas had to remain incognito. And if they were caught, then they were back off to the forest again for another, 13 years, was it? 14. So they had to remain incognito for 1 year. So this curse was very helpful. Who's going to find Arjuna? He's become a woman for a year. There's no way you're going to find him. So this is how the pastime unfolds. So Urvashi, yes, so she was very insulted, because not only was she declined by Arjuna, but he was earthly. How dare an earthling turn down a celestial? This is like, but personalities like Arjuna and Pururava, they're special, so they can be attractive even to those higher persons. So, just to fill in the details, who is this Agni Stali? Well, it's mentioned if you were here yesterday. I wasn't here, I was working, but Agni Stali, or was it 2 days ago? I'm not sure when the Prabhupada lecture was. Anyway, Agni Stali, what happened was, Urvashi, as I say, King Pururava was attached. So there was an arrangement. Okay, once a year, she agreed, I will be with you. So then that time happens, and then he's feeling terrible. because he's so attached. So she says, oh look, just worship the Gandharvas. So he worships the Gandharvas, and then the Gandharvas provide what looks like Urvashi. So King Purava, he thinks he's with Urvashi. But then when he enjoys with her, he notices she's different. So the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out, every man knows the behavior of his wife during sexual intercourse. Therefore, he realized this is not Urvashi. So this brings us to today's verse. So Agni Stanam Gato, where is it now? Stalim Nyasya Vani Gatva. Nyasya means gives up. He realizes this is not Urvashi, therefore he's given up this Agni Stali, who appears to be Urvashi but actually isn't. So the purport is very much about yagya. Yagya is a nice word. One time one sannyasi was explaining the difference between yagya and dhanam. Dhanam means charity and yagya means giving. What is the difference? It's a very obvious difference, but how do you define it? How would you say, what's the difference between yagya or sacrifice and charity?
Charity can be given to humans, yagya is for supreme law.
The answer that I heard was, it's about the relative positions of the persons. In yagya, the lower is given to the higher. In charity, the higher is given to the lower. So when you give in charity, you're given to someone who's in need. When you perform yagya, you're actually doing it because you're in need. You're in need of something. It's for your benefit. So the Bhagavad Gita is describing the cycle of yagya. Ivam pravartitam chakram nanuvartaya tihaya. Aghayor indriya ramo mogam partha sajivati. Those who do not perform the established cycle of sacrifice and live only for the satisfaction of their senses, they are sinful people and their life is lived in vain. This is in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So yagya is described here as by the word chakra. Actually, it's not just chakra, it's pravartita chakra, meaning it's established by the Vedas. So yagya is like a cycle, because whatever you give, you get back. So it goes round. Rather than take, you give to the demigods, and the demigods give back to you. And whatever they give back to you, you offer back to them, and they give back. So therefore it's a cycle. Now it's actually interesting, it's a cycle in more ways than one, because in the 9th chapter it is said, Ivam trai dharma anuprapana gatagatam kama kama labante. Those who perform this tri dharma, or the dharma of the Vedas, they only receive repeated birth and death. Therefore, if we engage in this is mentioned here at the karma kandiya yagya, the yagya where we're offering to the demigods for some material desire and they're giving back. If we are engaged in that cycle, then we, and the demigods actually, are revolving in the cycle of birth and death. So the humans, through yagya, that's pious activities. Ultimately, they will achieve the heavenly planets. And the demigods, Shini, Punyu, Marchalokam, Vishanti, they will actually fall down to the earthly planet. So we see there's 2 cycles going on here. The cycle of sacrifice and the cycle of birth and death. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita makes it very clear. Yagyartat karmano nyatra, loko yam karma bandhana, tadartam karma kantiya, mukta sangha samachara. That if we perform yagya only for the satisfaction of Vishnu, then the bondage is cut. This is the how to break the cycle of sacrifice. So yagya, I mentioned yagya means when the lower person gives to the higher person as an act of recognition that this is a superior person. Now this principle is actually very natural, and we see it even in this country. You know, how many people believe in yagya? How many people know what the word yagya means in this country? Not so many. But the principle of yagya, you can see it taught. They teach it to children. I was taught this. Whenever my parents or someone gave me a bag of sweets, they said, first of all, offer the sweets around, right? So I had to go and, would you like one? Would you like one? And most of them said no. Then, okay, now I stuff my face, right? So first of all, we offer to the person that gave us, right? This is the principle of yagya. So we see it's natural. Parents understand this principle. But when you frame it in a spiritual sense, then it becomes very weird and people don't understand it. But actually that principle, you can see it's how it's very natural. So this is yagya, and actually on the word yagya, it's interesting how the term yagya is used in two different ways in this verse. Sorry, in this purport. There's the formal yagya. What does formal yagya mean? It means you're offering something. You have the ghee, you have the fire. That is what yagya means. So it said, Tretayam yajyato makai. In Treta Yuga, yagya is the process. But then in Kali Yuga, they're saying, Sankirtan, yagya is the process. So yagya is the process in every age, right? But here in the Treta Yuga, it's the formal yagya. Whereas in the other yagya, it's the principle of yagya. So the Sankirtan yagya, which means sacrifice for Krishna. Yagya Sankirtana prayaya jantihi sumedasaha. And that is actually what is intelligent. It's mentioned here. This is intelligence. So we have to be careful what is intelligence. And the reason that we have to be careful is if we don't understand what is intelligence, then the whole movement can be diverted into wrong intelligence. Like, for example, if people think intelligence means university education, that's not the Bhagavatam description of intelligence. It means performing Sankirtan Yagya. And the best example I know of is the 7th chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya's associates are dancing and chanting. And the Mayavadi sannyasis, they criticize it. Now Prabhupada explains that it's called Taurayatrika, unusual word. It means this kind of dancing and playing musical instruments. It's like, from the Varnashram perspective, it's what Shudras do. Shudra as a musician is Shudra class. So when the Mayavadi sannyasis, they saw this group, headed by Lord Chaitanya, they were thinking, this is Taurayatrika, it's low class. They actually use the term bhavuka. Bhavuka means it's sentimental. It's like, sannyasis, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to be studying the Vedanta Sutra. And you're supposed to be meditating on the Supreme Brahman. None of this musical entertainment. This is frivolous activity. But actually, as Prabhupada explained, this is actually, or as Mahaprabhu explained, this is actually incorrect. So it's the same in the Hare Krishna movement. Intelligent people are the people that dance in kirtan. This is actual intelligence. And one time, there's one Prabhupada disciple, Vrindavaneshwari, she explains that one time Prabhupada said, there are 3 ways to transcend the body. Dancing, chanting, and playing musical instruments. So we think, maybe, some of the children are good at playing musical instruments. They like to do it, and we think, it's just for beginners. But no. This is not the case. So this is sublime intelligence, and it's not about how many slokas you know. It's more than that. It's being able to absorb, transcend the body through these activities which on the material plane look like simple activities. So these are some considerations on yagya. So Treta Yam Yajatomakai. This is the Yuga Dharma for Treta Yuga. So what's the whole verse? Kriti Yad Jayato Vishnum. Yeah, Kriti Yuga. Kriti means Satya Yuga. It's meditation on Vishnu. Treta Yam Yajatomakai. Then in Treta Yuga, promise of sacrifice. Dvapare Paricharyayam. In Dvapara Yuga, it's deity worship, and Kalau Tad Hari Kirtanat. In Kali Yuga, it is Kirtan. So the Yuga Dharmas are kind of being indicated here in the verse, and Prabhupada, because he's very pragmatic, he must bring in the Yuga Dharma for this age, because this is what's most important for us. Now, it's interesting to note that in the Bhagavad Gita, there is a statement, Yagyo Vai Vishnu. You seen this one? It's in one of the purports. Yagyo Vai Vishnuhu. It means Vishnu is Yagya. It has several meanings. In the Bhagavad Gita, when it says Yagyartat Karmano Nyatra, perform sacrifice for Yagya. In this sense, Yagya is a name for Vishnu. So Yagya literally means Vishnu. But it has another meaning as well. It means that it means that the performance of Yagya is the same as service to Vishnu. So Yagyo Vai Vishnuhu. And it reminds me of another statement, Raso Vai Saha. It's got the term vai. So these little sutras, they describe Krishna in various ways. So Krishna is yagya, and the process of attaining Krishna is yagya. Raso vaisaha, Krishna is rasa. He says, rasa mevayam labdva anandi bhavati. If we obtain this rasa, we become blissful. Interesting, there's a difference between rasa and ananda in this verse. We think of rasa as bliss, but rasa gives bliss, ananda. So Krishna is rasa and Krishna is yagya. We perform the yagya to Krishna, ultimately we become more advanced, then we experience the rasa. If we go for the rasa without the yagya, this is called sahajism. I was reading actually the standard in the Gaudiya Mat was for not reading elevated literature was very high. For example, the 4th chapter of Adi Lila, the sannyasis, even the residents of the mat, they were forbidden from reading it. Also, there's another chapter which I was surprised. I didn't know what was special about it. It was the chapter where Mahaprabhu falls into the ocean in ecstasy, and the fisherman captures him, and then the fisherman touches his body, and he becomes mad. You know this pastime. That chapter is also wasn't allowed. You weren't allowed to read it. And also the later part of the chapter where Ramananda Roy is speaking with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's very good to be always humble and not try to go above your position. Some humility is there. And actually Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, when he opened the Bag Bazaar temple, he composed some verses. And one of the statements he said, Pujala Ragapata, Gaurava Bhangi, means we worship the rag path, the path of devotional service and intimacy, keeping it above us. We always remain above us. Because if you think you're there, this is like, it's arrogance. We should be always low and humble and see that actually this Mahaprabhu's come to give us the spontaneous love, but we should always see ourselves as unqualified, and we should look up to it. And the irony is, if you look up to it and keep a distance, then you can actually enter into it. Whereas if you arrogantly think you're there, then you lose it. So there's some considerations about the dangers of sahajism. It's interesting, this verse. I've never seen this phenomenon before, but it's explained that the actual moment of changing, which would have been changing from Satya Yuga to Treta Yuga, actually happened at this point where Pururava is meditating. Now, I've never seen any particular pastime where you're actually transiting from one yuga to the other. So it's happening, and it's interesting how it happens. It reminds me of what happens when Kali Yuga changes to Satya Yuga. It's described how Kalki, he's there destroying all the demons. Then it's said that the aroma from his body enters the nostrils of these very unfortunate people. But then the aroma enters the body, and then Satya Yuga happens. It's like enlightenment through smell. You know, sometimes we talk about you can only be enlightened through a person. Well, it is true actually, because only Krishna can enlighten. But in this change of yuga, you see it's happening through smell. And in this verse, it's explained, or in the purport, Shishirada Gokulananda ki jai, Shishi Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shishi Go Nitai ki jai. Yes, in this verse and purport, it's explained it's happening through the heart. There's some enlightenment in the heart. In other words, Pururava, he's meditating, and suddenly, because the yuga changes, suddenly all this knowledge of sacrifice manifests in his heart. And what does he do? Well, he's unfortunate, because he could use that knowledge to do the pure yajna, but because he has material desires, it's explained that he uses it to do impure yajna, karma kandiya yajna, which is for satisfying material desires. And if you paid attention in the purport, you'll notice that Prabhupada says, for material or spiritual desires, the Sankirtan yajna. So it's not that because you have a material desire you're impure. It's what yajna you choose. If you have a material desire and you perform the Sankirtan yajna, you're not considered impure. Whereas if you perform a karma kandiya yajna, you're considered impure in that sense. Therefore it said, akama, sarvakamava, moksha kama, udaradi, Tivrena bhakti yogina yajeta purusham param. Second canto. Now whether one has no desires or all desires, one desires liberation, an intelligent person performs tivra bhakti yoga, which means pure or intense, unalloyed bhakti yoga for worshipping the Supreme. So even though you have material desires, you're still considered intelligent because you're doing the process you're choosing is correct, which is difficult to get our head around, right? Therefore, it is sometimes said, Prabhupada said, sometimes asked, how many pure devotees are there? Right? And Prabhupada said, how many people are in this movement? They said, that many pure devotees. What did he mean by that? Actually, from scripture, we can understand, and this is actually explained in the Nectar of Devotion, actually in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that Uttama Bhakti means, Anyabhilashita Shunyam, means the intention is pure. One is desiring to do it for the right reasons. And it's debatable at what point is it called pure. I mean, I've seen different schools of thought on this. But one school of thought is karmana manasa gira, that if one's body, mind and words are engaged, then even though there may be material desires, one is considered pure. Therefore, when Prabhupada said, all my disciples are pure devotees, then philosophically that's not incorrect. But from another perspective, we look at it differently. We can see purity, we can talk about it actually having uprooted all the sinful desires. There's two ways to look at it, and they're both correct, and depending on time, place and circumstance, you may preach either way. So, I'll open it out for questions. If anyone has got any comments or questions.